sbagliata, messa fuori, c'è Pirlo, ancora Pirlo di tacco, tiro, gol! Grosso, gol di Grosso, manca un minuto, gol di Grosso.
Hello and welcome to the Milan Talk podcast. I'm your host Samik Paul, and apologies about the recent absence, but we're back in business and here to chat about the 2-1 win over Cagliari on Sunday. Not the most convincing of displays from the boys, ground out the 2-1 win thanks Kessie's brace, sealing a comeback victory. I felt like there was a real distinct lack of quality and composure on the ball. We did show plenty of grit, plenty of determination, particularly in the second half when things got a lot more scrappy, but without that quality on the ball, I think we made it harder for ourselves. I did mention on Twitter, even after we went behind, that I was genuinely confident that we could get back into the game and get 3 points, which we did. But as a negative, I felt like it could have been a lot more convincing and a lot more comfortable if we'd have played with a bit more quality on the ball. So positives and negatives to take away from it, but 3 points in the bank and we move forwards. Manager rating out of 10 to start. I've given Gattuso a 7. First win away from home, so that's a plus for him. And I think you've got to give him credit for the organisation that we saw in the team, which was crucial. Kept it tight defensively, even though we weren't firing up front. And I think he needs more quality from certain individuals and less lapses of concentration, which is out of his control mostly. So you can't really point the finger at him for those situations. But I felt like he did his part well, and that's why I've given him a 7 out of 10. On to the player ratings, starting with Donnarumma, I've given him a 5. The conditions clearly didn't help him. Obviously, the game was at risk of being postponed shortly before kickoff. I know they did the checks, so the wind was wreaking havoc throughout. You could tell from the long passes up the field that it wasn't pretty. It wasn't easy to deal with. So I think that played a massive part in it for him. But having said that, I don't think we've ever seen him look that uncertain throughout a game, whether it was flapping at crosses, whether it was just dealing with balls into the box. He didn't look comfortable at all. And the main reason why I've given him a 5 is, of course, the goal. I felt like he should have done a lot better. He got down to it, didn't read the bounce of the ball, and I felt like he should have saved it. So Donnarumma gets a 5 for that. Calabria gets a 7. I think he did his defensive duties well. Cagliari didn't have a great deal of joy down his side of the pitch. I do feel he could have got tighter on Barrea for the goal. That was probably one negative I'd take from his performance, but he broke forward when possible, offered a bit of support down the right flank, and then showed his versatility to switch over to the left in the latter stages of the game after Rodriguez got sent off. So a good shift from the youngster, so I'm giving him a 7. Bonucci also gets a 7. I think he did really well to stand up to Leonardo Pavoletti. Obviously, it was always going to be a physical and aerial battle between the two. Nullified his threat for the most part, in my opinion, and still managed to spray those passes around with the distribution that we know from that he's capable of, even with the tricky weather. So I think it was a good performance from him, so I've given him a 7. Romagnoli also gets a 7, but I'd give him the edge slightly between the two centre-halves. I do feel as though he performed better out of him and Bonucci. I think he was composed on the ball, as he always is, dominant in the air and attentive in his tackles. Another really good performance from him. We've seen a string of them in the last few weeks and months, so definitely good signs from Romagnoli, and long may it continue. Unfortunately, Rodriguez doesn't make it a 7 across the board at the back. He gets a 5. Sent off for 2 bookable fouls, caught out defensively on both occasions, really sloppy defending, and ultimately he was made to pay and got his marching orders. So I personally didn't have any complaints with that. Continues to offer a little going forward. I feel like he does get isolated when he does break forward. I don't feel Çalhanoğlu is there up ahead of him to give him the support he needs when he goes into those advanced positions. But I think for him, defensively, it wasn't good enough, and that's why I've given him a 5. On a more positive note, Kessie gets an 8. Tireless, combative, driving force in midfield, as usual, all the things we expect from him. But crucially, I think he paired that with the composure in the final third, which is something that I've been screaming out for from him since the start of the season. Countless occasions we've seen him getting into dangerous positions, whether it's to take a shot on, whether it's to cross the ball for an assist. He always managed somehow to choose the wrong option. This time round, obviously, there was no real indecision in it. Great finish for the second goal. And to pair that with what he always offers on the pitch in midfield, I think that's a fantastic combination of things. So if he can find consistency in doing that, then obviously he's going to develop into a fantastic player. So on this occasion, 2 goals, swung it back into our favour, won the game for us. So Kessie gets an 8 out of 10. Lucas Biglia gets a 6. One of his better performances, I feel, since he joined the club. I think he swept up really well in front of the defence, kept things ticking over in possession. Again, I don't think he was overly ambitious with his passing, but he did what he needed to do. And hopefully, all we can say is that it's the start of a good run from him if Gattuso is now going to stick with him in the holding midfield position. We've obviously Montalivo deployed there, and he's come out and Biglia's come in. Obviously, for me personally, I think everyone knows I'd like to see Locatelli in that slot, but doesn't seem to be the preferred option for Gattuso. So I doubt we're going to see that anytime soon. But if Biglia is going to be the man, then at least this was a building block, and hopefully he can continue to improve. Bonaventura also gets a 6. I feel like his influence kind of waned as the game went on, as he started to tire. Didn't really pose as much of a threat as we need him to. He's obviously one of our main creative players in that more central role with Suso and Hakan on either side. Kalinic isn't obviously going to create much for others in the sense of providing that spark of magic and that assist or that through ball. That is solely Bonaventura's job, so more from him is needed. But in his defence, he did have his moments. He did cause a few problems, had a couple of shots on target, so not overly critical, but I just feel as though it wasn't as good as it could have been, so I've given him a 6 out of 10. Unfortunately, Suso is one down on that. I've given him a 5. Not a great game from the Spaniard for me. I don't feel or remember him getting involved or doing anything of note. I felt like he gave away possession too often, whether that was trying to be too ambitious, trying to take on too many players, giving needless free kicks away. It was very frustrating. Just not his night. Don't think it was one of his best games. And perhaps concern, I'm not too sure, but he's now gone 8 games without a goal. And for me, given how influential he is for us, I think that can be considered a concern. So the sooner he gets on the score sheet, the better for us. Kalinic, I may surprise a few of you, but I'm going to have to give him some credit on this occasion. I have given him a 7. Whether that's being generous I'll leave that up to you. But for me, I feel like he played a key role in the win. He won the penalty, which led to the first goal, provided the assist for Kessie's second, and he battled very hard alone up top. Again, it always comes back to the same thing with him, in that he needs to be more of a goal scoring threat. He missed 2 really good chances across the game, didn't really offer much else, seemed to fall to the ground very easily, didn't really pose much of a threat, even though he worked the Cagliari backline hard with his movement and runs and pressing, but just not enough of a threat for me. So I'm not, by no means am I saying that this was a really good performance, but I think the credit for me goes to how he was decisive in big moments of the game to get us back into it and win it. So for Kalinic, 7 out of 10 on this one. If you feel that's too generous, then please do leave your comments below. Hakan gets a 6. I do feel as though it was another step in the right direction. I think he was wasteful in certain situations, but having said that, he does add a different dynamic to our attack, whether it's with his vision, whether it's with his distribution. When he is confident, I do feel as though he can make a massive difference to the way we play. So for me, another good positive step in the right direction, and hopefully it's going to lead to him being a real creative hub in this side. I know there was one moment where he received the ball out on the left and Bonaventura made an overlapping run on his left, and the two linked up really well. I'd love to see more of that moving forward. I think that was a real highlight for me. So let's see more of that, and Hakan is getting a run in the team now. No excuses. Let's see him deliver. So this occasion, 6 out of 10 for Hakan. Substitutes, unfortunately, none of them get a mark because they all came on after the 70-minute mark, and that's my kind of ruling. So a bit unfair to go and start handing out ratings on such a small sort of sample. But Locatelli, decent performance in the last 15 minutes or so. Added a boost of energy in midfield as we started to get really scrappy with Cagliari. So positive from him. And again, I will reiterate this every week if I have to. I really want to see him in the starting lineup. Whether Gattuso lets us see that is another matter altogether. But for me, I think Locatelli has to start, and we'll have to see if that eventually comes. Abate brought on for Suso. Obviously, we needed cover in the latter stages after Rodriguez's red card. So Abate did what he does. A bit more sort of experience, killing the clock, but nothing much of note to kind of report on. And then Fabio Borini, a couple of minutes on the pitch, as you'd expect, ran hard, kind of put the pressure on Cagliari when they were in possession. But aside from that, in his defence, not a lot of time to do much else. So all 3 substitutes had a decent enough impact, I suppose, but not enough for me to give them a rating. Onto your Twitter comments. Troy Vaughan at Hark the Sound. Troy was pleasantly surprised with the result and performance. His man of the match was Kessie, and his flop of the match was Donnarumma. Completely agree with you there, Troy. Kessie, of course, man of the match. 2 goals, real driving force in midfield, and everything we want to see from him. So no complaints from me. And flop of the match, Donnarumma. Again, yep, I'd have to agree with that 5 out of 10 that I gave him. Again, I will argue that the conditions and the weather didn't help him. I'm sure that was the factor in why he looked so sort of shaky on Sunday for some reason. But yeah, flop of the match, can't argue with that. That's a fair shout. Jmart at Jmart2075. Kessie was his man of the match. Hate to say it, but Kalinic had an effect on both goals. Suso was invisible today, and not playing Silva was a negative too. Jmart, I completely agree with everything you've said as well. Kessie, man of the match, absolutely. And as reflected in my player ratings, I almost feel bad giving Kalinic a decent mark, but you've got to give it credit where it's due, and he definitely did have an effect on both goals. Suso was invisible, can't argue with that. Absolutely spot on with that, and that's reflected in the 5 out of 10 for him as well. And again, it comes back to the same old story with Silva. I think I've not yet spoken to anyone on Twitter who doesn't think either Silva or Cutrone should be playing ahead of Kalinic. If you do feel Kalinic should be playing, then please leave comments below. Ultimately, I just don't understand the decision to leave Silva on the bench, because Gattuso continues to talk about him in the media, about how important a player, how talented a player he is, and yet we're not seeing him on the pitch. So either Kalinic is doing his absolute best Van Basten impression in training to get the nod every week. I don't know, but we're not seeing it on the pitch. And the sooner the better, Silva gets his chance for me. On to Samir Mohammed at Samir Mohammed 72. Unfortunately, Samir missed the first half, but positives for him was that we were playing as a team. There was nice passing between Hakan and Jack. Excellent observation there, Samir. Definitely agree with you on that one. Kessie was amazing and Calabria was great. Again, 100% agree with you. 2 points spot on there. Negatives for him, Kalinic was good but not good enough. Agreed. Again, as I say, I gave him a 7 out of 10, but that was purely down to sort of being in those decisive moments leading to the 2 goals. Aside from that, I don't really remember anything that he offered to the game where I was like, okay, now you're starting to win me over. There wasn't really anything in the performance, but like I said, credit where it's due. He did have an effect on the game, so fair play to him on that front. Samir asks, is Silva dead? I don't think so. I think he's alive. I have seen him in pictures in training, but it'd be nice to see him on the pitch for a change. But again, like I said, Gattuso keeps talking about it, but whether he does anything about it is a different matter. The way we played the last 25 minutes with Cagliari, if we do the same against Lazio, we are dead. Absolutely agree with you. Like I said, it's just too scrappy, inviting pressure, asking for trouble, and even that chance late on with the header that went just wide, it was almost like Benevento all over again, and we don't seem to have learnt our lesson. So whether it's lapse of concentration, whether it's slipping into some sort of comfort zone because we're ahead, I don't know what it is, but like I said, against better opposition, we're definitely going to get unstuck. So that is something that Gattuso needs to sort out. Man of the match for Samir was Kessie. 100% agree with you on that one. And flop of the match for him was Jack Bonaventura. Interesting choice. I do see where you're coming from. As I did mention there, I felt like he did slip as the game went on. And given the expectations of what we want from him in a game, definitely did disappoint on that front. So flop of the match, a fair shout on that with Jack. So guys, thanks for listening as always. You can keep up with me on Twitter and Facebook at MilanTalk1. I'll be back next Sunday for reaction to the game against Lazio. But until then, I'll speak to you soon.